Dare to dream. Imagine a settlement with a watchtower. Imagine a place defended at all points of the day. Imagine a staircase stretching high and high into the sky. And no matter which way you look, a silhouette in the distance tells you that you are safe. Well, imagine no more. Let's change the weather and have a little look, because this is the Watchtower, and this is Build It. We will be making this lovely little structure that takes us all the way from the bottom of the greenhouse all the way to the top of the world, looking out over the way, and we're going to decorate it. We're going to use a host of building techniques while we do it, and we're going to make our settlements far, far safer places. Can we build it? Yes, we can. Well, greetings and welcome to Build It episode number 1. Now, a lot of the materials that we're going to use to make this watchtower are going to be from the barn tab. Obviously, that was new in the Far Harbor DLC, and I'm going to be using the concrete ones here. But of course, with all of these designs, you are more than welcome to replace any single little bit, because it's going to end up being your creation. And in fact, with it being your creation, it is very important that we give you lots of options along the way. So at many points, I will be kind of stopping and explaining all the different things that we will be hoping to, the different options that you can make in your particular watchtower. Because depending on where you're building, the height of the kind of the location and all those kind of things, then you might want to use different options, and maybe more than one watchtower in a different place. You might want to use different ideas. Now we need to make sure as we start to climb our watchtower that the stairs that we're about to place are going to be in exactly the right place. Not just about the right place, but exactly the right place. And the way you do that is you just place a wall like I've done here, and it's a barn wall as well, because we're using barn stairs, therefore we need barn walls. And we're going to place just a half floor there, which is going to come out a little bit. Now that means that we can then lock these barn stairs to the route to the stairs there, which means they'll be in exactly the right place for our structure. Now, I've already talked about the fact you're going to have different options. Now, stair placement is one of those options, and we're going to be placing ours in the middle today. But you could place it here on the edge as well. Obviously, give a slightly different aesthetic look without really changing how the kind of barn works. And of course, a lot of these creations on settlements are more aesthetic than kind of practical. But we know in our heads, in our imaginations, there's definitely a nice kind of reason why every single little thing is there. Now we are going to be getting quite high today, and cue any drugs jokes that you wish to make. But you need to make sure that you are safe. And obviously, if you're on PC and console, you can just toggle God mode or something like that. But one easy way to always make sure you're safe is kind of get onto the edge of something, and then look in a particular direction. Hold down the position key or the action key, the button that places the object, and then move the right stick or the mouse. So I'm on PC, so I'm now currently holding the E key. And while I'm holding that E key, I can just move this item around, and I can change its height by scrolling my mouse button. And that means that I'm not moving at all, which means I am completely safe, as long as I don't get attacked, while I'm creating this structure. So what we're going to be doing is we're going to be doing 4 staircases in a row, which will then take us up to the top. Now, when you're placing these little half floors, you need to make sure that they stick out to the sides, and the reason for that is that it needs to match the shape of your foundation. So if your staircases are in the middle, you're going to have the edges sticking out, and if your staircases are at the edge, then your floor pieces will be at the edge too. They'll stick into the middle. So again, let's go up another one. Now you need to be careful with the height of your particular settlement. Now I know from looking at various other tutorials that Abernathy Farm has a ridiculously big height. It goes up a lot higher than a lot of the others, and I did some experiments over there, because initially I wanted to place this tower way over there by the truck, because that's the highest point of the settlement, but I actually couldn't fit in a 4th floor, and I really wanted a 4th floor, so I've come over to one of the lowest points of my settlement to actually enable me to make a slightly higher tower. And I've currently got 1, 2, 3 staircases, and our tower is eventually going to have 5. But you'll know if you hit the top of your structure, just because you'll eventually reach a point where the game just will not let you place anything else. And that's another reason why it's probably advisable for you to build the main kind of outline of your structure before you actually start kind of putting any kind of detail on, because nothing's more depressing than kind of building things and then having to kind of take them down again afterwards. So do have a good look at whether do have a look at whether you can actually fit everything in before you start committing yourself to kind of extra kind of decorations and things like that. So once you've done your 4th stairs, we now need to change the design a little bit. Now, of course, you can change the design all the way as you go up anyway. But the reason why we need to change the at least the top staircase is because we need to have the staircase that goes up to the top floor, which will actually be the watchtower itself, needs to be at the edge, because if it's not, you don't have room to put any of the objects up on the top floor, and this will become kind of more obvious once we get up there. So this staircase, this final staircase, is definitely going to go on the edge, like this. And once that is in position, going up to our 5th floor, I believe, we can now start to put in our design. Now, before I made this watchtower, I googled literally the word watchtower and looked for a whole bunch of different kind of ideas, and a lot of them have this really kind of stringy and metallic and thin structure with a really big, thick top, which is where the watchtower itself actually is. So now I'm at the top, I'm going to change from using the thin metal bits to the solid wood bits, and that's going to enable us when we look at this from the distance to see a really big difference between the kind of wiry frame of this structure and the thick wooden top. And we're then going to use a prefab, and we're going to use the very first prefab that there is to create the main part of our structure, because that's going to give us these nice pillars that we can then use to build our watchtower off. Again, be very careful as you kind of get up here, and a nice place for you to position yourself is going to be right here underneath the prefab. And then we're going to build basically an outline to the top. And of course, if you prefer, you can use some more of the barn ones, which are slightly see-through, or any others, but I'm going for this kind of thick wooden look at the top. And then you have another choice. You have another choice here, because this is the edge of your structure, but you can see there's a staircase there. Now, so what I've decided to do is build one extra row going out this way beyond the staircase. And this means at the moment the tower is not quite symmetrical. It goes out one row further that way. So you could, if you wanted, do the same out here. You could put another row to make it symmetrical, but I'm just going to use it almost a bit like a kind of an outlook. It's hanging out there ever so slightly. But just be aware of what you're doing and make sure you don't go kind of outside the green areas. Now, we've got a nice little roof here, but we'd like this roof to look just a little bit more, well, like a watchtower, really. So we're actually going to go back into the barn area, and there are some really good and interesting new roofs in the barn. And this is often the bit where you discover if you actually have room to put this floor in or not. But there is a roof which has this wonderful pointed top, which is going to make a really, really nice decoration. I don't think it's the better word, or style for this. Now, this can be quite hard to place. You saw it was red there quite a lot before I actually kind of got it into position, so it's worth having a little fiddle. Just make sure you know for sure that you still actually can place objects there. And again, use that trick by holding down the place button and moving your mouse or the controller to kind of maneuver it around before it will nicely kind of click into position to give us a nice triangle roof. You can't see it from here, but when you see the watchtower from farther away, then you absolutely can. Now, what we're also going to do is get one more barn piece before we finish, which is going to be a little half wall. Now, of course, this is to do with the kind of decoration, and this is very much down to taste, but I would like our little man who lives his entire life up here to be able to sleep up here as well. So I'm going to give him this little wall here, and we're going to put a bed up against it eventually and kind of turn this almost into like a little kind of room. But it gives that little bit of separation, and again helps this kind of top area here to just look a kind of like a bit more kind of chunky, really. Now this is going to be obviously a guard post, and so how you kind of make this a guard post is probably going to be using the actual guard posts like so, and then you've got a kind of a few options here. Now you could put them on the edge diagonally like that, and do that for all four corners. You don't have to use four, of course, but I'm going to go for the more kind of standard in the middle kind of sections like this, but it doesn't matter. The reason why I'm going to do mine more kind of square on is because it enables me to put kind of other things into the corners. We're going to be putting a spotlight in there and some other little bits and bobs. Now, if you're playing on console, then you'll probably have to position it a little bit like that, which can nicely, you can kind of step up onto it. It looks very, very nice. But if you're playing on PC and you have kind of place anywhere installed, then you can be a little bit more poetic and actually kind of line it directly into the floor like that. And if there is a way to do it on console as well to get that kind of line up looking like that, then please do let me know, and I'll include it in future videos when I do these kind of things. But I'm trying to give kind of take advantage of the PC options where possible without kind of excluding the console players from what we are doing. There's one, there's two, and here goes in our final guard post. We had a bit of trouble getting this last one in. It turned out we were going over the green border right at the bottom. So just, you do feel free at any point to just go down all the way down the stairs, just pick up a foundation, hold down the bottom. When you pick it up, you'll select the whole thing, and you can just move the structure around until you can find a location that you're happy with. Do of course remember that the overhang will be there. And if you're on console and you have to kind of put these bits slightly on top, you know, that is absolutely fine. It doesn't change the functionality in any way whatsoever. Now, because we are working very, very, very high in the air, I am now going to go around and start putting some kind of railings and other things in to kind of keep me safe. And because this is a guard tower, I think that these ones suit best. Now, if you're trying to bring a kind of bit of variety to the look of it, then of course you may prefer to use some of the other ones just to kind of vary it up a little bit, as if as if the resources have got scarce. And I know there are some people that very much prefer to have a very, very varied kind of design. So this is just personal preference, but it's for safety and to make sure that we don't plummet. You may even, if you like the very kind of metal look of the tower, decide to do the railings as railings. But I like to kind of pretend that my guys are going to kind of duck behind these objects and try and kind of keep themselves alive. And if we head all the way back down now, and it's advisable with this kind of tower to kind of keep looking at it from a distance, we can kind of see the structure start to take shape. At the moment, it's essentially physically impossible, and you can see here the change we made. We're just going to flip the tower around a little bit. So if you just go outside of workshop mode and go and look at it from a distance and kind of soak in. So we're looking for that very spindly look, going all the way up to a very, very solid watchtower itself at the top. Now, we do need, however, to make it look a little bit more realistic than it is currently looking. And there's two ways I found to do this. One of which will require a bit of glitching, and one of which everyone can do as long as you've got I think it's the Far Harbor DLC. Now, there is a spiked pole that looks like this, and it is pretty tall, and it goes probably about half the height of your structure. And by moving this pole around, if you kind of put it just into the corner and put it as high as you can possibly go, you can create that kind of effect. Now, if you're on PC, you could use your place anywhere tools to place it anywhere to get a second one going up to the roof. And then what you could do, click that in, what you could do is then probably put one here and then one in the middle right here. We had it set up before, one in this corner, one in that corner. So basically you've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 of them. So you've got 3 along here, 3 along here, 3 along here, and 3 along here, but obviously some of the sides are shared. And if you want to make sure that basically where the poles connect, that they are actually connecting and going one into the other. I mean, a slight overlap like that will look absolutely fine, but it needs to look okay. The other thing to check is when you go to the top, is that it's not kind of stabbing all the way through the floor. And if it is stabbing through the floor, it needs to be in a way that isn't too kind of basically upsetting. Now, you can do it even if you are on console, as long as you have a floor at more or less at the point of connection. Because what you can do is the rug glitch, and there's loads of videos online about the rug glitch. Go and Google it, and I'll probably make one as well explaining how it works. But as long as we can put a rug onto this flat surface, we can attach the pole to the rug and then kind of put it into place. So what you'd need to do is temporarily put floors everywhere at this height. We'll probably permanently put them there, which would allow you to kind of glitch those ones into place. I like the poles, but myself and my building partner Agrajag, kind of looked at the poles. We played with them for a while, and then we eventually decided we just prefer the pillars. But what we were thinking is we would probably make different ones in different places that, for kind of variety's sake. So if you head back into the barn and go to the miscellaneous section, you will find these lovely, sorry, I should call them posts, not pillars. And you want the really, really tall one, and it should quite nicely snap into position on your floor like this. And then you just want to stretch it away from you by pushing it as far away from you as possible, and you can do most of the structure from this height. Now, these ones don't snap right onto the corners themselves. Obviously, I've got my my kind of PC tools on, but they will snap into not quite the corners like this. And so what this allows you to do is actually kind of double up on each corner, which actually ends up looking rather nice. And you can just kind of snap one on top of the other on top of the other. So I'm going to go around and just put all of these into place, and we'll be back in a second. And if you find any of your foundations like I've got here are actually going into the floor, which is a perfectly acceptable way of building it, the way to get around that is then to look up and to look at the structures, the floors that are just kind of within range, and then you can kind of snap downwards from there. Now, you've probably noticed, those of you that are particularly eagle-eyed will have noticed that I'm not actually going all the way to the top. That's because although this you can place quite a long way away from you, you cannot place all the way away from you. So once these pillars are in, you need to just head up to your top floor. And of course, if you've built this watchtower even higher than I have in certain locations, then your top floor, there may be many floors that you need to do. But you'll see that once you get to this area here, you just need to snap these into position. And again, that little trick of just you staying in the same place, but moving the object kind of away from you and around from you is the easiest way to snap these into position. Now, another option for you is that I'm going just for the corner options here, 2 on each corner. So unless I've forgotten any, I should have had 2. I have forgotten some. But you can also snap these into position on the kind of here. See that there, and also here. So you can actually have 4 on each side if you want, and that means you then have a lot of wood or a lot of kind of poles going up. So just put them on kind of 1 or 2 pillars at a time, and then kind of have make your own decision about exactly how many pillars you kind of want. And again, I'd recommend that when you look at this, you don't look at it right next to where you're currently standing. Like you go and get a bit of distance, and you look at it from kind of 100 meters away, and so on. Now, so what we're going to do now is we're going to start adding in some of the other kind of floors and kind of boundaries. And you'll notice that the pillars have been nicely designed so that they don't block you placing any of the kind of floor pieces. But do be careful when you're kind of putting these in that you don't block the stairs. If I was to put a small piece right there, and this goes to the top floor as well, you wouldn't be able to walk past it. So you do have to kind of leave these gaps. Now what we're doing on this top floor is we're going to make kind of this extra kind of space here. This is just one floor below the top, and we're going to make just a bit of extra space for us to put some boxes, or you could put a desk in there, or maybe even a bed if you wanted to kind of move your kind of sleeping area. And then on the floors below, we're going to create this kind of perimeter. And there's two reasons for this. Firstly, in the world in my head, our guard is able to happily kind of walk around and patrol each kind of viewpoint and get good shots. But what this also does, and this is probably even more important, is when you look at this tower from the distance, all of these extra pieces of wood and metal will help to kind of create the illusion of all the kind of supports. Because although we've got these beautiful posts, what we don't have, and that's a mistake on my part, what we don't actually have is sideways posts or even diagonal ones. There are some mods that give them to you, but you don't actually have the ability to kind of fake that. So we're going to do it. We're using these bits of kind of wood instead. Now remember, if you do have the kind of spare wood resources available to kind of put some of the broken ones in, maybe we can put them kind of above each other as if some sort of boulder or large demon from the sky has kind of fallen into place. But by and large, it doesn't matter if you kind of duplicate. So now if we have a little look at our tower from a distance, you can see it's starting to look a lot more healthy. We've got the frame of it in place. The stairs are quite happily nestled within all those different floors, but crucially we've got those beams. And then comes the very, very tedious job of putting railings in. Now again, you've got a few options with how you do this. Now you can cut the railings through the pillars. The way you do that is you actually take the pillar out, put the railing in, and then put the pillar back in, and it snaps in that way. So in fact, you might want to put the railings in before you put the pillars in if you don't mind it going through the pillar. And let's face it, you know, maybe some guys drilled a hole through and made it kind of fit that way. If you don't want to do it that route, then you're probably going to have to use 3 small ones or a 2 and a 1, which looked kind of awkward, but 3's fine. And then on the inside, again, you use 1 big one. If you're looking to do it very, very, very quickly, then probably the ones that are just going to snap into place, you can kind of just, if you use these ones and you don't mind the kind of extra kind of gump attached to them, you can kind of just run around and kind of just click them into place like that. So it all kind of depends how much kind of hassle you want as you kind of do them. Either way, I shall be back in broad daylight. In fact, well, we'll get to broad daylight right now. Broad daylight with the railings in place. And then it's time for us to add some power to our little station. Now, I'm running one. I've got a little mod running here called Longer Power Lines, which I've done a modded video on. Do check it out. So I've allowed mine to go 3 times the normal length. So I should just be able to reach this. While I'm going up, you can see different ways of doing the railings. This first floor was done with all the different spaced out railings, which I have to say looked rather nice. Next floor was done with the completely kind of crossed railings, which do go through the kind of pillars there, which are a nice alternative. This next floor was a mix, so we had the crossed ones on the outside and then the non-crossed ones on the inside, and then we got to the top floor and it was all kind of irrelevant. But if you don't have longer power lines, you could consider putting a mini power plant here on your slightly bigger next floor, or of course you can just find a nice mixture of kind of pylons to kind of get it working. So then comes the time to light up your lovely creation, and of course put any other kind of electrical goods and stuff you want in there. Light, of course, is personal preference, but I would suggest maybe a pair of industrial wall lights on opposite corners can be rather nice. You know, something like kind of putting one on this side of the pillar and maybe one on the other side as well. And maybe kind of doing that in opposite corners is my suggestion, but it is entirely up to you. And a big bulb or right in the middle will do equally well. What I quite like to do though to kind of mix up the light sources is, if you can find the room, depending on the design you've done at the top, is to use one of these lovely barrels, fire barrels. They provide a little bit of light, and they provide you know, kind of warmth for your soldiers in the cold, dark nights and all those kind of things. Now, of course, you've got to be careful that you don't block up the routes completely. So do make sure that wherever you put your stuff, that there is then kind of another route round for your settlers to go. Otherwise, that could cause various issues. Now, because we're at the top of a very, very, very tall tower, you may also wish to consider putting a spotlight in. But the problem is where we currently are, is that none of the spotlights will be able to kind of see over any of the kind of life-saving fences. Now, one way you can get around that is a very popular little trick, is by using stairs, but not the big stairs, the tiny, tiny little stairs. And what you basically do is you get a tiny pair of stairs. All right, then so you stick a pair of these tiny stairs down, but don't worry, they're not going to be staying. And then you need to get another small one, and the small one can be any style. And I've gone for a particularly battered one, and then it's up to you. You can leave the stairs there, or you can kind of take them out depending on what you want. But just before you put your shack floor in and all happy, just before you do, we're going to put in a little container, and I'm going to grab myself a little chem box, and I'm going to stick it just in there like this. And the reason for that is because after you've placed it, it's actually very hard to put things underneath. I don't believe it's completely impossible, but it can be very, very, very tricky. But if you put that in under there kind of before you put the floor on, you can have something sticking out like that, which makes a really nice decoration. Once that is in place, you can then go and get your turret or your spotlight or whatever you want to have, and put it into place. Now, a little tip here. The spotlight in the game is not powerful enough to reach the floor. This is purely an aesthetic spotlight. So ideally, you want to have something for this spotlight to actually kind of shine on. So there's a tree over there, and I'm hoping this spotlight will reach that tree. So I'm actually going to angle this kind of towards that, rather than kind of a direct angle. But again, if you're thinking about, it might be something to consider moving your spotlight placement or your tower placement for. But we are going to place some more lights a little bit lower down as well. And once that's connected, of course, you then just kind of connect it up in the usual way. Another thing you could consider doing, if you particularly like the idea of lights off your towers, is getting some of these really cool construction light ones, and kind of pointing them, maybe coming on the next floor down, and kind of pointing them off the structure itself. That can also look really, really nice, especially if you again can use them to highlight a nearby object. And these ones crucially also do point slightly downwards. You can see the angle of the light there is slightly kind of south, so you can indeed use them to just kind of highlight a nearby area if you wanted. And of course, you will have to connect them to power individually. So do think about your kind of nearby structures and how you might kind of put that. And all of this was connected through a pylon, which is actually done by a switch pylon. So in fact, at any point, we can just turn all of these lights and internal lights on and off as well, which gives a nice kind of effect. And then I believe it's time for us simply to decorate. Now, this is going to be the little home of our soldiers. He's going to be spending a lot of time up here. So I would suggest you go for the kind of the smallest bed you can to kind of to squeeze him in, and we'll kind of put that right up against the wall. Because this is a military kind of installation, and every military bed you come across in the Commonwealth has a little military footlocker at the base, which is this green one. And if you can kind of squeeze it as far this way as possible, it should give you some more room at the other end to put another object. I mean, your goal really when you kind of decorate this place is to make sure that you still have room for all of the kind of, for the room for the set to kind of get around between all the kind of different objects. So you want to find objects which are quite distinctive looking and tall and thin, rather than kind of wide and fat. So a little table like this will fit reasonably well in this kind of location, or perhaps even a mini bar or something like that. And then it's a case of just finding a few objects to kind of put on them. You can put a shelf over the bed. It doesn't affect the usability of the bed. And so what we're going to do is then just going to go, we're just going to go into our inventory, find a few pieces of clothing and weaponry, and just kind of sling them down on the different locations to make it look far more lived in. And here we have the finished article with our little settler who's been assigned up here. He's got a bed, he's got a gun, he's got some cigars and stuff. You can see the spotlight there. I'm trying to pick out the kind of local area, and our guy desperately kind of patrolling. And if I bring it back to the morning, I'll show you how everything kind of looks from all kind of distant floors. Just shoved a few crates in there, got a little hat. It's quite tricky to make these guys stay. They do go up and down, but I have been known to also wall them in on occasion. I put some lights on 4 lights on the different rows there, and got attacked by mutants about 3 or 4 times as well. But here we go. This is it. This is the Watchtower, which I think it took a little bit over half an hour in the end because I was kind of filling and changing various things, but it's really got that nice thick look at the top and the spindly kind of legs and things going down. Remember, there's all sorts of variations you can do. You can put the ladders in different places. You can use the pillars instead of the kind of the beams and the posts, and all sorts of little changes you can do. But the design as a whole works really, really nicely. And I don't know about you, but I sleep just a little bit easier in my bed now, knowing that the Watchtower is on duty. If you have enjoyed this episode of Build It, then thank you so much for watching. Please press the like button, subscribe to the channel, and do come back for another exciting creation. You have been fantastic. And if you've got any suggestions for things you'd like me to make, put them in the comment section. And if you make any watchtowers, do send me some pictures. You can tweet me at TheAdiposeTV.com or leave me a link. Take care. You have been fantastic. Goodbye.